And a second win of the year for Callum Eilert in a race that was stopped early after a sizable accident involving Ryan Tveter, Pedro Piquet, but Ji-Kong Lee, Peter Lee, was the driver that had the most spectacular exit, being launched into the air. And the drivers then, with only a couple of hours break really between one race and the other, ready to go again. It's going to be, as is the new regulation, 33 minutes plus a lap. The cars making their way round onto the grid, and this is the grid based on a driver's best lap time set in the second qualifying session yesterday. The lap itself is over 4 kilometres long. We're in the fabulous scenery with the Red Bull itself looking over, and here based on the old site of the Österreich Ring. The Red Bull Ring is a great modern day circuit. There's lots of undulation, there are some slow bits, some fast bits, some elements of the circuit where a toe will work and you can gain some progress, and it's one that the drivers really enjoy. It's also one where the fuel load is such that the cars use so much of the lap on full throttle. The fuel load has, as it comes down, a big effect on making the cars go quicker, even if your tyres are starting to go off. And the drivers also now have to factor in the fact that they get 3 new sets of tyres for the qualifying sessions and the 3 races. So many will use a full new set for race 1 and then perhaps split another set across races 2 and 3. And it's going to be interesting now to see who has made the better decision on tyre strategy going into this race. Lance Stroll is the man who's on pole. He's got George Russell with him at the front of the grid. They're winners both this year. The second row of the grid is where you find, first of all, Callum Eilert, winner earlier on in the day, and Nico Kari having a good run. We don't have Ryan Tveter in this race, nor do we have Ji-Kong Lee after the accident earlier on. But the rest of the grid making its way round into position, and this promises to be another very interesting race indeed. Callum Eilert was seemingly unstoppable earlier on in the day. The only thing that did stop him was the red flag that suspended the race. There was an early safety car period, perhaps inevitably after an incident up at turn 2, and the formation lap will be getting underway at 2:35, so we've got about 10 minutes plus before we are in business. So the cars making their way round onto the grid. Just to go back to the incident from earlier on in the day, I mentioned that it was Peter Lee along with Ryan Tveter and Pedro Piquet involved. Many of you will have watched it this morning and be wondering as to the condition of the drivers. Let me offer you word for word a statement issued by the championship. A serious incident has occurred during race 1 of round 4 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship involving car 18, which was Ji-Kong Lee, Ryan Tveter and Pedro Piquet. This was it. As you see Ryan Tveter spin, and I'll carry on with the statement. When you've seen the accident in full, there is the monster impact that Peter Lee sustained, and then as Ryan Tveter's car was knocked into the path of Pedro Piquet, he too was lucky not to have a more serious accident. From another angle, there's the spin, and unsighted in the dust cloud, wait for the impact. It's like a horror movie. The car just comes out of nowhere, and Pedro Piquet almost launched upside down as he hit the spinning Ryan Tveter car. Following on-track evaluation, Ji-Kong Lee and Ryan Tveter were both transferred to the circuit's medical centre. One driver was initially unconscious, but both drivers were conscious on arrival at the medical centre. Ji-Kong Lee has subsequently been taken to hospital via helicopter due to possible head and back injuries. Ryan Tveter was taken to hospital by ambulance for further examination. That's the end of the statement issued by the championship after race 1. But the good news is that the drivers are more seriously injured, and we're pleased that the drivers are conscious and not more seriously injured after the accident. I spoke to one of the championship's technical crew after race 1. The first question was about the state of Peter Lee's car. The answer I got seemed to rhyme with Donald Duck, but the positive thing was that the car had stood up to the impact very well indeed. It was still recognisable as a Formula 3 car. The seat belts were still anchored in where they needed to be. The seat hadn't come loose or anything like that. So in terms of how the car stood up to the impact, very well indeed, impressively so.
You made the point, David, during that, what was horrible to watch, that the integrity of these Formula 3 cars now, extraordinary. And you're absolutely right. It was still recognisable as a Formula 3 car, wasn't it? And, well, thank goodness that the drivers, relatively speaking, are Certainly,
the more I watch it, the more horrifying it becomes, because you know what's coming, don't you? When you first saw it, it was a big surprise. Now you know what's happening. You watch it and you brace yourself, waiting for the impact.
You make the point. It's like a horror movie, and it was, wasn't it? You know, through that dust cloud comes this car, absolutely flat out, and is launched over the non-moving car. No, truly horrible, but. Good to know that the drivers relatively are as okay as can be. As we look at George Russell on the grid, who will be going from P2 in this race, the high-tech GP driver, former McLaren Autosport BRDC award winner.
That's right.
And George Russell then, pretty lively in race number 1, to be honest.
But he was busy, wasn't he? He had to do a fair amount of defending. Callum Ilott, the man that won the first race earlier on in the day. Championship situation is quite interesting. You're looking at the grid. Let me just quickly mention also, after race 1, Lance Stroll's now on 116 points, Max Günther 100, Callum Ilott's only 2 back on 98, George Russell 4th on 89, Nick Cassidy has 82, Ben Barnicoat now 76 points. So Lance Stroll, who drove an intelligent race this morning to keep out of trouble and to take second place points, didn't overdrive and make a mistake. He realised that the gap had already evolved when he got up into second position, so he was content to sit back behind Callum Ilott. Harry Tinknell having a word with him, former F3 racer, acting as driver coach this weekend. But it was a good drive this morning by Lance Stroll, and it's increased his championship lead. So Callum Ilott third on the grid, and then fourth is where you find Nico Kari, who got a drive-through earlier on for rather robust defence. He tried to block Alessio Lorandi, and in so doing put Ben Barnicoat on the grass. But Nico Kari in the Motor Park car, who's graduated from the North European Zone Formula 4 Championship, in which he was the champion last year. It's the sort of Finnish-Russian region series, now up into Formula 3. And he's shown flashes of speed this year. If he can convert 4th on the grid into a decent start, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes in this race. He's one of the many Red Bull drivers, of course. We're at the Red Bull ring, so there's a bit more pressure on the Red Bull drivers to deliver, as if pressure wasn't enough. And when Helmut Marko is in town, you've really got to deliver, because we know how ruthless he is at making sure his drivers perform.
Well, when you consider Callum Ilott,
yeah, ex-Red Bull racer,
who of course had that backing last year, now does not have that backing. And you made perhaps the point, and fair one, is that perhaps a little bit of pressure released has seen him become even better. Yeah,
and he's gone to Van Amersfoort, where dare one say it's a perhaps more friendly environment. I'm not saying Carlin's not a friendly team, but you take away that Red Bull aspect and the pressure, and you're with a jolly team, the Dutch team, and maybe it just fits Callum Ilott. Plus, of course, he's now got a year's experience of Formula 3 machinery and data and how to drive them and the circuit, so he comes here as a much stronger driver for this year. Now there, lining up 5th on the grid, one of the revelations of qualifying, David Beckman. He was fastest at one point, another Red Bull back driver. Look at the crash helmet. But yesterday he had a very good run in qualifying. More stars are here. Nicky Lauda is here as well.
Yes, so Nicky Lauda there.
Bring the kids just arrived.
Just arrived. Discussing flight landing opportunities.
Ever the airline boss, isn't he? Ever the airline boss.
Why not land here?
Yes, correct. So it's good to see. When was Nicky Lauda last at a Formula 3 race? Anyway, it's good that he's here. It's good to see him. And you look at the next of the Motor Park cars on the grid. 6th on the grid, Sergio Sette Camara. I was just mentioning David Beckman a moment ago. It's only his second meeting in a Formula 3 car, so to be 5th on the grid is a mighty effort for the Look Motorsport driver. Sergio Sette Camara is the most experienced driver on the grid in Formula 3 terms. He's done more races in this championship now than anybody else. He's now done 46 of them. Fascinating fact, 37. And Sergio Sette Camara, 6th, he will start, ahead of Maximilian Günther, double winner this year. And Ralph Aaron, the 2 Prema cars, 7th and 8th. 9th on the grid, Mikael Jensen. And 10th, Nick Cassidy, who was a little bit disappointing, I'm afraid to say, in qualifying yesterday. And that means that he's got work to do in the race now. There is Max Günther, who had a win at Norris Ring last year when he was driving for Mucke, but he made the switch, didn't he, at the end of last season to Prema, get a little bit of knowledge in before the start of the season. But at the moment, he's being outpaced by his teammate in terms of the championship, Lance Stroll.
Fear not, viewer. Fascinating fact 38 from the Addison Encyclopedia will come before the end of the race, have no fear. So, Lance Stroll then with his pole position. Alongside him is George Russell as we continue to take our look through the grid. And there we see Ralph Aaron then, another Prema Power Team driver. briefest of conversations with Rennie Rossin from Prema Power Team yesterday, late last night, as we now look at Mikkel Jensen in the Muka Motorsport colours. The K-Styler 24 supported Muka Motorsport car of Mikkel Jensen, then going from P9 on the grid for the second of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship races here at the Red Bull Ring in glorious sunshine. Weather conditions absolutely perfect.
It takes me back to last year. It was a glorious Saturday.
Okay.
By gum, did it change for the Sunday?
By
Yes.
gum. Okay, here then, P10 on the grid, and Prema Power Team driver Nick Cassidy, who perhaps was, as David has suggested, a little bit underwhelming in race 1. We will see what he can deliver in race 2. It's going to be a big ask from P10, though, that's for sure.
And there, looking down onto the grid, is a gap where Pedro Piquet's car is not. Perhaps not surprising, given the damage it sustained in the earlier race this morning, because it was also involved, took a very big whack, and it might also be that Pedro thinks that he'd be better off just recovering as well before he gets back into a race car. But that's another of the Van Amersfoort fleet of cars. But often if a car is not expected to be on the grid, it's notified in advance, and therefore the grid closes up. It's strange that because the grids are published from half an hour before the race, so it makes me think that it's been a late decision to not get the car on the grid. I'm just looking down the pit lane to see whether
is it possible it could be.
Yeah, perhaps if another installation lap were done, for example, and the pit lane closed while it was on it might be in the pit lane, but I can't see it, so it looks like it's going to be a non-starter. But it's as I say, it was expected on the grid, but it was another very damaged car from that big accident this morning. Just again, to finish off the story about that, the FIA regulation, of course, when you have a red flag, isn't the same as you might be thinking if you're a follower of British motor racing, where if you are not running at the time of the red flag, you don't get put into the results. So the drivers that were involved in the accident were classified as finishers on the countback. So Ryan Feiter was 16th, Peter Lee was 18th, and Pedro Piquet was 19th, perversely.
Extraordinarily, yes.
Yeah, they were the cause of the stoppage collectively. So the grid is now formed with that one gap, as we've just been mentioning. The red light's counting down all the while. So we've got 3 minutes to go now. 2 minutes now before the green flag lap gets underway. See the clock there. And it's a shame that the Pedro Piquet car is not there, but I've just noticed another of the Van Amersfoort engineers walking out of the paddock as though at the very last moment they were still around the Piquet car. So I'll keep an eye out for that. The grid girls making their way from the track back down the pit lane. And it's really been a very, very busy time, not just today in terms of 2 races for the F3 teams, but they've come here for setting up, park up Wednesday, set up Thursday, get on track Friday, after they've been to Pau.
Yes.
Which in itself is normally a bit of a car breaker. And if you saw race 3 as an example, you know that there was a big accident at the start with Sergio Sette Camara ending up the wrong way and him getting done head on, and cars everywhere, and a lengthy safety car period, and. So the teams deserve the break they get from this to the next round at the Norris Ring in late June. It's been a very, very busy start to the season. They've been to Paul Ricard, they've been to the Hungaroring, then to Pau. But as ever, the championship goes to some great circuits. It's a real shame, getting on my soapbox, that it doesn't go to the UK this year. It's a great shame, given the number of British teams and drivers, that there isn't a UK round, but hopefully that can be sorted out for next season. So, engines are firing up, and the grid now is being cleared. We will be in business very shortly. There's one more warming up lap to get some warmth into the Hankook tyres. Looking down onto the grid, then we've got the gap where Piquet should have been, and he's coming down the pit lane right now. So I was right, they are to the very last moment still bolting the car back together.
Extraordinary.
And he will start from the pit lane, but fair play to Van Amersfoort and to Pedro Piquet. His father is here as well, so you've got the 1979 Brabham team, haven't you, of Nelson Piquet and Nicky Lauda here to watch on.
Good point.
And are they still good friends? Anyway, one can watch Junior and Nicky Lauda here, as we have seen already. So Pedro Piquet will start from the pit lane. The rest of the field now being released, and Nico Kari slow away, but thankfully, because not everybody goes past him, he's able to keep the grid position. But it is up to Lance Stroll now to control the pace. Lance has had one win already this year. He won the opener at Paul Ricard, and he's going to be the man to concentrate on, I think, when the lights go to green. Pedro Piquet we talked about him being in the wars in the first race. The reason he was in that part of the grid was because he'd already had to serve a drive-through for being out of position at the start. He crept a little bit, was over his white line grid marker, got a drive-through. That put him down the field and therefore into somebody else's incident.
Yes.
So this is turn 2, this is the Remus corner. You climb uphill, it's a sharp right, a great corner that, and it always delivers incident, as we saw on the opening lap of race 1, and it also prompts some overtaking. And you'll see plenty of that, I'm sure, over the course of this race. So there is Piquet. He will start from the pits, and therefore he will go after everybody else. But let's see what progress can be made from there. I think the main thing is that he's on track and getting himself straight after this morning. A quick recap of the grid then, based on the best time a driver set in qualifying 2. Lance Stroll ahead of George Russell. So it's Prema ahead of High Tech from Van Amersfoort, from Motorpark, from Mucker. A real shuffle of the teams up at the pointy end of the grid. Stroll, Russell, Eilert, Kari, Beckman, Kamara, Günther, Aron, Jensen, Cassidy, Newey, Piquet, Ericsson, Barnicoat, Lorandi, Mazepin, Zhao, Miney, Hubert, Tan is the way they qualify. Take Piquet out of that and stick him at the back because he will start last from the pit lane. So the Red Bull Ring, which I have to say is on my list of favourite circuits. It really is a great place. Has always delivered good racing in Formula 3 terms. And when the championship came here last year, it was a similar format, really, of 2 races on day 1, which were run in the glorious weather, but the third race on the Sunday was a little bit damp, to say the least. But last year we had 3 different winners across the 3 races. Are we going to have the same this weekend? Let's see. That's the lap. And the drivers now making their way down to the Red Bull Mobile curve, from which they accelerate up towards the grid. Run wide at the last corner. Don't be surprised if the race director wags his finger, because they are very, very keen on track limits. Dave's timing screen in race 1 was littered with people being reprimanded for abuse of track limits. Let's see how we fare in race 2. 33 minutes plus 1 lap is the regulation duration for this year. And there you can see Pedro Piquet starting in the pit lane. And so we are just about ready to go. It is the 11th round of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. David Addison and Dave Richardson trackside as we wait for the green flag to be shown at the back. The drivers now will look towards the lighting gantry. When 5 red lights go out, we're going to be racing. 5 lights on, engine notes rise, it's go, and a good start is made by Arlen. A dreadful start this time, though, by Sergio Sette Camara, who gets bogged down on the grid. Everybody has gone around him, but Lance Stroll converts. Pole position into the race lead. Second is George Russell, and Callum Eilert is third, as inevitably some run wide going out of turn 1. Up towards the Remus curve they go now, with Max Günther getting up the inside there, and Mikkel Jensen. Eilert comes out of the draft on the outside line to try to get past George Russell for second place. He's done it. Very good move indeed, but Russell fights back. They break late going into the corner. Wide will go Eilert. Up the inside goes George Russell, and way wide goes one of the Prema cars. There's a rotation in the pack as well. Guan Yu Zhao has gone around, but he should be able to recover from that as the leaders work their way down towards turn 3 into the Rach corner. Eilert second is defending for all he's worth from Russell. Fourth is Kari. 3 wide in the pack. Look further back. Most of the Prema fleet together. Up the inside goes the car of David Beckman, and Mikkel Jensen also making good progress as they head downhill for the first time. The battle still rage on. Max Günther trying to defend from Jensen, and then up behind them is Nick Cassidy. Some great battles in the midfield as the race leader Lance Stroll has checked out already.
Absolutely extraordinary. Then it's the battle of the Brits, isn't it, between George Russell and Callum Eilert through the first few turns. Very, very exciting indeed, but it is Callum Eilert who's got the better of George Russell.
As they're diving up the inside, having a look at least was Ralph Aron. Yeah, couldn't make it stick wide. There goes Jensen. Oh. He's going to lose the place if he's not careful down at the Red Bull Mobile curve. Up towards the timing line. Lance Stroll leading by 1.5 seconds at the end of lap 1. And Carlin is getting ready to do a quick pit stop, as though one of the drivers will have got some frontal damage. So let's wait and see as the leaders go by. Way wide there, bounces Harrison Newey in number 20. That was up at turn 1. Down the pit lane is coming Weiron Tan, as onto the grass gets squeezed Mikkel Jensen. So Tan and Zhao pit at the end of the opening tour. It's game on for the lower end of the top 10. Ben Barnicoat trying to get up the inside as well, but through goes Newey up alongside. He's gained a place. Barnicoat's going to go through as well. And Ralph Aron running a little bit wide, so losing out. That's Weiron Tan having a new nose cone fitted. But he was a long way back anyway. And that looks like a nose cone that would have been used on Peter Lee's car. But anyway, down towards turn 3 they come. Good challenge being made there up the inside. That's Jensen going through and a spin. This is going to create mayhem. Cars scatter left and right. I think that was Nick Cassidy that got it all sideways. So thankfully, not too many cars involved in that. I was fearing the worst.
Yes.
And you don't often see people getting it wrong there. A very strange place to get a big slide on. But anyway, they have survived largely. Cassidy will be delayed. Might be a bit of bodywork on the ground. There's a yellow in that middle sector. Meantime, 21, which is Antoine Hubert, comes under attack as the leader works his way up towards the timing line. Right, race order, deep breath. It is Lance Stroll ahead. Callum Islet is second and the gap's come down. Third is George Russell, big gap back. Fourth is Kari. Fifth is Beckman. Sixth is Gunter. Seventh is Nick Cassidy. In 8th place is Harry Newey, 9th is Barnicot, 10th is Mikkel Jensen. So I tell you a lie, it was Ralph Aaron that got sideways, not Nick Cassidy. Sorry, I called it wrong, Ron Prema car. So Ralph Aaron with damage to the front. If he survives, he's going to have to head for the pit lane. Yeah, there's a better shot of the number of the car. So the front wing is dislodged, it ends up underneath the car. Is there much debris on the road? That's the answer. Safety car. Race director thinks safety car is needed to sweep it out of the way. Safety first and all that. So we go safety car, and that's going to bunch up the entire pack, and that is going to make it lively on the restart. You can see why we need the safety car, because they're all having to drive through the shards of carbon fibre.
The big loser in that, in my opinion, is Callum Islet, who had broken away from George Russell and had taken a 10th out of Lance Stroll's time. Now it's going to be bunched up together.
Well, yeah, but he's just gained 1.4 seconds,
well, of course,
because he's going to be closer. So
Stroll is going to be the even bigger loser in that safety car.
PK back in, suggesting that this is a test session, isn't it, for race 3 now, just to make sure the car is au point. So the safety car is on track, and you know what the format is. You can't overtake while the safety car is on the circuit. Everyone has to stay in formation. Everybody will bunch up. And to coin a phrase, safety cars breed safety cars. So quite, you never know what's going to happen on the restart. Number 20 under investigation, Harrison Newey. And I was just looking at that replay at the start. There was one from further back on the grid that looked like it had crept the start, and that I thought was Nikita Mazepin, but there's nothing on our screen to suggest that it's under investigation. So Pedro Piquet in replay left the pit lane, and then this was what happened up at turn 1 on the opening lap. That was Zhao being turned around by wire on tan, hence he needed a new nose cone. Right, that fits. And Islet versus Russell early doors. That was a very good fight. Good move that by Callum Islet to go ahead. George Russell fighting back. So wait for the contact in the midfield as Zhao got tagged and turned around, and that was Ralph Aaron getting all sideways. So who did he glance off? Camera? I think it was, wasn't it, in the other motor park car? And Ralph Aaron did not make it back to the pit lane. He has stopped out on the track.
Oh.
Interestingly. It may have been that the car just wasn't moving enough with the wings stuck underneath it. But I would have thought if he could... Oh no, he's just gone over the line. That's strange. It's been a very long lap, but he's got going again. So he has survived, having shed the bodywork. And yes, he's made his pit stop. So he has been in and sorted it out. He's back on track. Right, so now the race director needs, for the two stragglers, which are Ralph Aaron and Wyron Tan, to catch the queue of cars. They're about 2/3 of a lap back.
Right.
And this is a race director's nightmare. Do you let the field go, or do you keep the safety car out there waiting for the others to catch up? So for the moment, it's worth keeping them out there, and then perhaps build the speed up as well so that the cars are released on warmer tyres. The marshals are still busy with their brooms, one of which is in component parts. But hey, the track is clear. So the safety car comes over the timing line, and you can see the pace is now being picked up. The weaving around is becoming ever more energetic to maintain the tyre temperature and the tyre pressures.
Yes.
And Lance Stroll's advantage was 1.4 seconds. Well, he's now got 6/10 in hand over Callum Islet, but we'll wait and see how the restart pans out for both of them.
Whilst appreciating that Islet and Russell were battling right at the very start, it can take nothing away from the fact that Lance Stroll was just able to just get away, and he put, you know, an incredible margin between himself and P2 and P3, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's impressive on cold tyres.
Yes.
Because we have seen others make mistakes on cold tyres. Safety car's going to be in this lap, but Lance Stroll did it absolutely right and pushed as hard as he could, but safely on that opening lap. the same is true of Callum Ilott and George Russell. You know, they weren't making mistakes, they were busy battling, but
yes,
it was a very good opening lap of the race by Lance Stroll. Let's see whether he can do it again from a rolling start. Safety car in this time. We're going to go back to racing. It's 33 minutes plus the lap tagged on at the end, and in the sunshine, the Austrian fans enjoying the racing. They've still got lots of DTM action to enjoy later on today. They've had a lively Carrera Cup race. They've had a very spectacular Formula 3 race early on in the day. First of the 5 occasions at which F3 and DTM hooked up this year. Formula 3 has been away with World Touring Cars. It's headlined at Pau. It will join the Blancpain Endurance Series, or now the Blancpain GT Series Endurance Cup at Spa for the 24 hours, the annual visit to the Belgian circuit, which is always a fabulous event. But for now, Lance Stroll slows everybody right down, and once he decides to accelerate, he's got to keep accelerating. You can't go and slow because of the consequences that has. Callum Ilott tries to make sure he goes with him at the same time. Don't lag too far back. Go, go, go! And Stroll does pull another couple of lengths over Callum Ilott, so a good restart by Lance Stroll as they work their way now down towards the Rindt curve. The green flags fly as the cars work their way up towards the timing line. You can overtake when you've crossed the safety car line. And so here they come up towards the timing line itself, and Stroll has got, what, about 4 lengths between himself and Ilott as they work their way now up past the pit. So Stroll it is, 6 tenths up. Stroll on, Ilott second, Russell third, Kari fourth, Beckman fifth, Gunter is sixth, Cassidy seventh, Newey eighth, Barnicoat ninth, and Jensen 10th there. The drivers in the point, 1 wide at turn 1, 2 wide at turn 1, and make that 3. So that last one was Wyron Tan going wrong and giving a place back to Guan Yu Zhao as the race leaders work their way up towards turn 2. Heart-in-mouth stuff here as Ben Barnicoat trying to find a way up the outside. Harry Newey is alongside Nick Cassidy around the outside of Autumn. Then goes Max Gunter. Barnicoat again, as in race 1, does his dive up the inside there. They're not quite 3 wide, but it's like a rolling start look, looking further down the order there. Look at them.
Absolutely incredible. And whilst all this action is going on, a drive-through penalty for Nikita Mazepin, and also for Ben Barnicoat.
Oh dear, well I was mentioning Mazepin, wasn't I, off the grid, saying he looked like he was out of position. I hadn't spotted Barnicoat, who there, look, goes to the inside of Mikkel Jensen. But this is all going to unravel for the Brit, I'm afraid. Double winner this year, first year in Formula 3, but for a jump start, then Ben Barnicoat is going to be penalised with a drive-through. So he works his way at the moment in the top 10, but he's going to be dragged out of that battle very shortly. There is David Beckman running in a good 5th place. Very wide indeed. 1 or 2 of them coming out of the Rindt curve, including Barnicoat, who very nearly left the door wide open for Jensen.
Yes.
But in a sense, it matters not, because he's going to lose the place anyway, now that he's got that drive-through to have to serve. Lead gap 1.3, Dave.
Yes, and Stroll has done a great job in, once again, rebuilding that gap to Callum Ilott, then George Russell, and Nico Carey, and Beckman then, as the cars all go through that turn 1.
Mazepin pits for the drive-through, so he gets his out of the way. The Russian 16-year-old fights on for 4th. We've got Kari versus Beckman. So David Beckman, like I said early on, 2nd weekend in Formula 3, going very, very well. Where's Ben Barnicoat's start? Oh, it's a very, very slight creep. They're one behind the other.
Yeah.
Certainly Mazepin's was more noticeable than Barnicoat's, but yeah, the evidence was there. It was a creep. So now Nico Kari 4th. There's Barnicoat back up the inside to retake the place away from Mikkel Jensen, but the drive-through beckons for him, I'm afraid. Right, Stroll is being caught by Ilott. The gap is down by 0.2 of a second in the first sector alone. And Max Gunter, number 17, a long, long way down that top 10, so he's not scoring so well this weekend. Bad news for him as far as his championship hopes are concerned. He lost a pole position yesterday for a yellow flag infringement. Going too quickly under yellow flags. So Nico Kari 4th, David Beckman 5th. Motorpark versus Mucker, working their way up towards the end of the lap. Volkswagen engine for Kari, Mercedes power for David Beckman, and the gap is down to 0.9 of a second now between the top 2. This is going to be interesting because Ilott has just set the fastest lap and he's taken 0.4 out of Stroll.
So game on then as Callum Ilott tries to chase down Lance Stroll.
Up the inside goes Joel Eriksson against Alessio Lorandi, forces him out wide. Nick Cassidy a long way down again, tries to buy into this in the Prema car. You've got Sergio Sette Camera behind them. Cassidy gets past Lorandi. Camera comes up the inside of Lorandi now, heading up towards turn 2. Nick Cassidy will go wide in and try and get tight out, but right round the outside of all of them goes Camera. Has he done it? He has! Fantastic bit of driving right round the outside. Everybody was so busy squabbling on the inside, the door was left wide open for him, and Sergio Sette Camera works his way round the outside. Brilliant stuff. Now Lorandi's on his toes, heading down towards turn 3, trying to find a way through on the inside, but couldn't do it there. So, Sergio Sette Camera making amends, making progress again. There is Wyron Tan with the new nose cone aboard the car, still squabbling with Guan Yu Zhao. Number 1 is Lance Stroll, and it's not just Eilert catching in, but George Russell as well.
Whilst that's going on, track limits issues, black and white flag being shown to Harry Newey. So the first one that we've seen in this race so far. And look, the gaps are really, we can see on screen now how the gaps are coming down.
I'm tempted to suggest that Lance Stroll is on used tyres, or some used tyres. Maybe Callum Eilert's on a new set, and he's keeping race 3 with a used set, but again, you never really know until after the race what drivers have decided to do, because you get these 3 sets to split across the 2 qualifying and the 3 races. So do you mix and match, or do you run a combination, or do you keep a full fresh set? Into the pit lane has just come Nick Cassidy, I'm afraid. So what's been a pretty disappointing weekend for him is now seeing the car brought down the pit lane, but the leaders are nose to tail virtually approaching turn 3. Cassidy rather forlornly arrives at Prema in the pit lane. Stroll now is really going to have to work hard to defend this lead. He's got the 2 Brits right up behind him.
And Callum Eilert is in this awful position, isn't he, where he's hunting down Lance Stroll, but he's got to be so very careful, because George Russell is trying to buy into it as well. So he really is right in the middle of this, and as you say, Lance Stroll is going to have to start to think about defending here, whether the tyre choice has proved to be why Callum Eilert has got ever closer to Lance Stroll. It was 6/10 last time around, the margin between the 2 of them. And Lance Stroll, Callum Eilert, George Russell then the 1, 2, 3, and well, just for the moment, Stroll has been able to resist any attack, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, what he needs, in a sense, is for Russell to get onto the back of Eilert. That gives him a get-out-of-jail-free card, because it takes some of the pressure off. But Callum Eilert's pace is good, although that said, Lance Stroll has just done the best of anybody in the last sector. He did run a bit wide at the Rindt curve, but the advantage is 0.6 of a second. Now, Eilert's not really close enough, you see, on this next part of the circuit to benefit from a tow. The move at turn 2 needs to start at the end of the previous lap. A good run through the Rindt curve gets you close past the pits, means you're close coming up this section to make the move here, but you've got to think it back at the lap. And then nose to tail under braking. So if Eilert can stay on the tail now, he might just be able to get a run all the way into turn 3.
Benefit perhaps. Well, let's see. Stroll, Eilert then P1, P2, George Russell lagging behind now in P3. So these 2 are getting away a little bit from George Russell, who's not able to match the pace of Lance Stroll or Callum Eilert at the moment.
Indeed, that's right. Then you've got Nico Kari 4th, being caught by David Beckman. And this is a look at the end of the previous lap. So Lance Stroll uses the curb on the way in and gets a little bit crossed up, but actually it was Eilert behind him that ran even wider.
Yes.
So the officials are having a look at that. Any more on track limits, Dave?
Yes, there is.
And David, say that.
David Beckman is the next one to receive the black and white flag for failing to manage those track limits.
Okay, Sector 1, Eilert quicker than Stroll. Sector 2, Eilert quicker than Stroll. They're coming up to the end of the lap. There's the leader. So number 1, Lance Stroll, second season with Prema, comes up, crosses the line, and 0.6 actually becomes 0.8. Again, he does the best of anybody in the last sector, and Stroll had just done the fastest lap, but now Nico Kari has set the fastest lap. The car's getting lighter all the time, and for those that are on good tyres still, the pace is there. So Kari now chasing on in pursuit of Russell, who is 0.6 back on Eilert. Although we said in the course of the lap that George Russell was fading away from his fellow Brit, by the end of the lap, he's closer to Eilert than Eilert was to Stroll.
There's seesawing there, isn't it?
Or elasticated.
Okay. Through turn 2 they go then.
And now the top 3 looking equidistant. 4th is Nico Kari, still going quite strongly then, behind them in the motor park car. He's had a 2nd place this year, Nico Kari, but he's been a bit up and down.
Another one for track limits warning, Antoine Hubert. So the warnings keep coming at the moment, and as the tyres wear yet more, track limits become ever more of an issue. perhaps.
Yeah, Harry Newey served his drive-through that you mentioned for forcing another car off the road, and he's down in 17th place. This is Pedro Piquet ahead of Ben Barnicoat, and in the background, Harry Newey, again, runs very wide, bounces over the curb. That's a long way off the road there. So the race leader this time, Lance Stroll, he's on his own as Eilert goes really wide, and now George Russell's going to be able to get the run on him, I think, as they come up over the line. Eilert goes defensive. Russell to the inside. This is for second place. It was a mistake made by Eilert. George Russell's got the line for the corner. He locks up. He's got through. Will he go wide? Yes, he will. Callum Eilert goes back ahead of him. A little bit of bodywork drops off Russell's car as he bounces over the curb. And so, Callum Eilert thinks, I'm back into second, and I managed to gap you by a couple of lengths. Russell had good speed up the inside, but couldn't slow down in time. Ran wide. And it all started here. Watch Eilert in the background. How wide is that? So that cost him a bit of ground. It put George Russell into his slipstream. Up the inside at turn one. Went the other Brits, but George locks up, scrabbles into the corner. Doors left open on the inside line. Callum Eilert gets his place back.
Just before that,
yes,
Callum Eilert was being warned for track limits.
Right, and then he went wide again.
And then he went wide again. Also being warned at the same time, Mikkel Jensen and also Nikita Mazepan. So my point of saying that is that warning came up just before he went very, very wide. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, he's now had another strike, hasn't he, in effect? So,
yes.
Yeah. Sergio Sette Camara, after that ripper move around the outside up at turn 2, is now in 9th place. There he is, in fact, looking for a way past Antoine Hubert, but he's also done the best of anybody in the first sector. Now, that sometimes means, gosh, he's going quickly, but often it means he's got a toe. Either way, he is closer to the back of Hubert, the French Formula 4 champion, going back to 2013. And so the ex-Formula Renault racer now being caught by Camara. Over the timing line they go. Right, the Eilert-Russell battle, good to watch, has presented Lance Stroll with a golden opportunity to break away, because he's now 2.1 seconds up the road. Strolling away. Eilert second, Russell third, Kari is fourth, fifth is Beckman, sixth is Jensen, seventh is Gunter, eighth is Hubert, ninth is Camara, and 10th is Joel Eriksson into the points now. And there is 21, Antoine Hubert. He's got Sergio Sette Camara right on his tail. And this is the run over the brow, down towards Rauch, down towards turn 3. So let's see whether this is going to be a chance for Camara to make the move. I reckon he's a bit too far back.
Yes.
Still think that move around the outside was one to savour. I hope we get to see that in the highlights at the end of the race footage, because it was a great, great move. And he's not done yet either, is he? The Brazilian driver, as he heads downhill now on lap number 13. And we've got 13 minutes plus a lap still to run.
So we continue to watch this, which is the battle going on for P8 between Sette Camara and Hubert then. And you're absolutely right, that move around the outside was a joy to behold. Okay, our race leader then, Lance Stroll. And he now has some 2.5 seconds margin over Callum Eilert, and then there's just 3/10 between Eilert and George Russell.
And George Russell has just set the fastest lap of the race, and he's taken another 4/10 out of the man ahead of him, Callum Eilert. So he's certainly not given up in his quest to get back into second place, despite having run over the curb and despite just losing a little bit of the aero, the wing end plate. So he's still pushing as hard as he can. Callum Eilert then running in second place, and George Russell's got a toe on this lap because he's just done the absolute best first sector. So he was only 3/10 back at the start of the lap. Wait for the live shot, you'll see just how close he is. There's the answer. And not only are they close, and Lance Stroll therefore is getting away, but look at Nico Kari in 4th place.
Very good point. So there is race leader Lance Stroll. You can see what a margin he has over these two now, Callum Eilert and George Russell. And then, as you rightly say, Kari is trying to buy into that also and is getting ever closer. But for the moment, Callum Eilert can breathe a sigh of relief. The pressure from George Russell has gone away just for a couple of turns, only for the wick to be turned up once again, for sure, from the Norfolk racer, who is running in P3 at the moment, but really wants to get past Callum Eilert and make that P2.
In the glorious scenery of Austria, you've lost a point for bringing Norfolk into the conversation. Much flatter part of the world. Over the timing line then, Lance Stroll goes through, and the gap that he's got is 2.6 seconds, and now Lance Stroll has done another fastest lap, and that's impressive given that he's on his own. He's not getting a toe off anybody to help him gain any speed in different sectors. This is purely down on merit and a very quick car. So Lance Stroll, 2.6 seconds to the good now. Eilert second. East Anglian Russell third, Nico Kari in fourth place as they work their way uphill. Now what about Kari in the sectors? He is trying to find a second before he gets onto the tail of Russell, and he's fractionally slower than George in sector 1, but he is quicker than Callum Islet. So net, it's concertina in second, third, fourth.
So as we watch them then head downhill now, Kari gets ever closer. There's Lance Stroll, who, as you quite rightly say, gets a tow from no one, so that makes his run at the front ever more impressive, and that 2.6 second margin over Callum Islet, who is running in P2 with George Russell, Nico Kari, then it's Beckman Jensen. Gunther Hubert is P8, Santa Camara, and Joel Eriksson rounds out the top 10.
And bear in mind, just going back to Lance Stroll, that 2.6 seconds he's had to build up twice because, of course, it went away while we had the safety car out. So, yes, he's been helped, of course, by this battle going on behind him, but Lance Stroll heading for a second win of the year as George Russell runs it out wide, this time coming through the Red Bull curve. Over the timing line they go, and the fastest lap is done again by Lance Stroll. So I was a bit concerned early on about tyres. Take those away now. And Callum Islet's under investigation now for failing to manage track limits. So, oh dear, he's under attack as well as under investigation as the cars climb their way up towards turn 2. And Kari is still a second back. He's not really gaining. He needs them to delay themselves just a little bit more.
Yes, he could do with them fighting even harder, couldn't they? George Russell ever a bit closer there, perhaps. And let's watch this now as they run down to the next turn. Whether George Russell is able to... no, he's probably not close enough.
No, too far back. But can he force a mistake out of Islet? Indeed, will officialdom have a say in this as well if Callum's under investigation? He's not alone in that, I fear now, is he either? Because
George Russell
is
right behind him, also under investigation.
Yes, quite. So it might be Nico Kari for second place.
To be fair, he's not under investigation. He's been shown the black and white flag, so that's his effectively that's his warning.
He's had the warning, yeah. So George Russell pushing hard. Of course, part of this is you get into the dirty air of the car ahead. It affects your own aero, which makes it a little bit harder to drive, but you still have to manage the track limits. That's not really an excuse. And both of them up onto the curb, but as long as it's only two wheels, that's fine. The leader goes through with another fastest lap of the race. Lance Stroll now a 1:23.1. So a very, very good effort this. He's built the race lead to 3.8 seconds. That's a new lap record as well, because it was Gustavo Menezes from last year, a 24.8. So it's a little bit cooler this weekend, earlier on in the year compared to the August date we had last year. But very, very impressive stuff. Lance Stroll then getting away, and he's 3.8 seconds to the good. Now we've got 8 minutes and change on the clock. You're looking at 8th, 9th, 10th, where it is Antoine Hubert, Sergio Sette Camara, and then Joel Eriksson. And Camara is going to have a go around the outside. We know he can do this. And is he going to pay out this time? No, up the inside will go Eriksson in 22. Camara floors the throttle. And now he's found himself on the inside for the next kick, but the outside line for turn 3, so he lost the place to Joel Eriksson. Slots back in behind. Eriksson pulls out. That, in a way, is what Camara wants, because he's going to take the position on the inside. He's going to get back up the inside of Joel Eriksson, who left the door open for him. Eriksson gets a bit of a squeeze. He's up wide onto the curb. Camara has the inside for this part of the track, but he's going to be on the outside now, going into Pirelli, but he's through, and Lorandi goes round the outside of Eriksson. Wheel to wheel. Joel on the inside line hangs onto the place. Who says you can't overtake in Formula 3? You can at the right circuits, and this is one of them, with the nature of the corners and the straights offering good racing. And we have got Lance Stroll, the leader, going over the timing line, 4 seconds clear of the rest of them, but some great scraps going on down through the field.
Absolutely. These three. Stroll is up the road, isn't he? Islet has now broken away by nearly a second from George Russell as well, and Kari doesn't seem to be getting much closer to them, but look at this.
To the outside line goes Sergio Sette Camara. On the inside is Antoine Hubert. So he tried it a lap ago, did Camara, and he lost a place and had to win it back again. Let's see what happens this time. Hubert knows what's coming. Camara tries to come out of the draft a bit earlier. He needs to get the cut back, really, because running round the outside was a risk on the previous lap. He's ahead fractionally. Trouble is, Eriksson's going to get up the inside as well, so there's nowhere for Camara to cut across. He stays on the outside as best he can, but he's not going to be able to stay alongside. He'll slot back in behind, and have a look behind Lorandi. You've got Aaron and Zhao running side by side. Now again, Camara pops out of the draft. Down they come towards turn 3. Outside line, can't do it. Switches to the inside, but again, you see the way the road contours, he's going to be on the outside line for the next corner. They run side by side, down towards Pirelli, into turn 4, drop down the hill, and Antoine Hubert hangs on to the place. But he's having to work hard for it. This is for 8th. So Hubert, Camera, and then Ericsson, and he's under attack because the Pau Grand Prix winner, Alessio Lorandi, in 11th spot, is right on his tail.
Been some incredible driving from Camera, hasn't there?
Yeah. And talk about commitment. I mean, he tries everywhere, every lap, every corner. Sometimes it gets him into strife, but he's been great to watch. And we've got a yellow flag out somewhere. So it's in turn 7. It's gone in again, so somebody's had a brief off, but the track is clear once again. Leaders go through. Got just over 5.5 minutes on the clock. Lance Stroll's very nearly in race 3 because his margin is nearly 5 seconds. He's absolutely blitzed the rest of them in this. Right, time for a deep breath. Here comes turn 2 and Sergio Sette Camera, which is always a spectacular combination. They climb uphill. Again, Antoine Hubert hugs the inside line. Camera to the outside. Can he go all the way around? No, he can't. Ericsson dives at the inside. He's done it again. He's got past Camera, and wide goes Hubert, and Joel Ericsson takes 2 places. Camera stays exactly where he was. It's just that the guy behind and the guy in front have swapped over. Here comes Camera. He's on the outside. He's gone through. They almost bang wheels. Ericsson's on the inside. He brakes late, and he goes back ahead. Lorandi at the inside of Antoine Hubert, who gets run wide over the curb, so Lorandi gains a place out of that. He's into the top 10. Hubert has gone dropping way down from 8th to 11th, and Sergio Sette Camera is on the tail of Joel Ericsson. He's still trying to attack, he's still trying to defend, and he's gained nothing out of all of that despite his best efforts. And Joel Ericsson, great opportunistic move up the inside, job done, and now look, Ericsson is trying to get away. He runs 8th, having started the lap in 10th.
Extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
And we're not done yet, are we? 4.5 minutes. So, behind Lance Stroll, the dominant race leader, there's still plenty of action. Stroll now leading by nearly 6 seconds as this battle pack goes over the line for 8th all the way down to, 14th place really now. Guan Yu Zhao has a look on the inside and gets past Ralph Aaron as wide goes Ericsson. Right, so Camera tries his move again. Pulls out of the draft a bit early. He's going to be level on the outside though now, heading up the hill. He's got his nose in front. He tries to move across. They almost touch. Ericsson stands his ground on the inside, breaks late. Can Camera duck up the inside? Let's wait for the next shot and see. Wyron Tan has gone ahead there of Ralph Aaron, but at the front of the queue, Camera has done it. He's gone through, and here comes Alessio Lorandi. And meantime, Eilert versus Russell versus Kari, 2nd, 3rd and 4th have got themselves absolutely together. So those gaps have disappeared.
Yes, Kari has really got onto the back of these two now, hasn't he? So George Russell right in the middle there, as you can see, who's currently running in P3. Just ahead of him is Callum Eilert and Nico Kari running in P4.
Right, and behind them is another great battle. So Eilert, although he lost a huge chunk of time on that lap, he is getting away once more, and so actually Kari is not staying on the back of George Russell. So it did concertina up for a moment. Now this was at the start of the lap. That was Ericsson running wide, delaying himself, and that's what enabled Camera to make the move up at turn 2. Ericsson being warned about track limits. So he got the place back up the inside. Camera got the switch back, and Alessio Lorandi bought into that as well, and he was able to go through and get up alongside. So turn 2, sometimes it's a pinch point and creates accidents, but for this race it's given us lots of overtaking. Right, Lance Stroll dominates up front. Eilert 2nd, Russell 3rd, Kari 4th, David Beckman 5th. Battle developing for 6th. Mikkel Jensen ahead of Max Günther. Günther for Prema behind 2 Muka cars, the team for whom he drove last year. And he has a tentative look up the inside, but Mikkel Jensen, his former teammate, defends. Down through turn 3 they go. Wider is Jensen than Günther. Then the field plunges downhill once more. So 2 more minutes plus a lap. So there's going to be time for, depending on where the race leader is, possibly 2-3 more laps actually. Let's see. The flying lap is a 1:23, and Lance Stroll's just gone across the line, so he'll get this lap and another, and then the mandatory lap at the end. There he is, Lance Stroll then. 5th in the championship last year, and
8.5 seconds to the good.
Right, okay.
It's been really, really good drive from Stroll, particularly, as you've said, lap record and fastest laps coming, you know, in the final third of the race, if you like.
some drivers will tell you if you're out on your own, you have to kind of treat the laps as a qualifying session to keep yourself alert, because you've got no pressure around you, and you can sort of drift off a little bit. And Lance Stroll has very much treated this as a qualifying session. He's nailed blistering laps and has built that gap, as you've been saying, to nearly 8.5 seconds now. We've got the battle on for third, though, now, because George Russell has been caught by Nico Kari as they work their way into turn 3. So can the Motor Park car get up ahead of the high-tech one? George Russell looking strong early on in the race, but he's certainly dropped away a little bit now and is in the clutches. So Lance Stroll is going to be able to get this lap in before the end of the timed element of the race. And then you've got the other lap still to be put on at the back of it. So he will work his way now up towards the completion of lap 22. Is this Lance Stroll's best ever drive? It's all been done on merit. He's had no help from teammates at all in this. He had to make a good start from pole position. He had to do it again from a rolling start. One or two uncharitable comments were made about team orders at Paul Ricard, and indeed at Hockenheim last year, when Felix Rosenqvist, having already won the championship, was content to let his teammate by. But for this race, absolutely no question about it whatsoever. It's been an exemplary drive by Lance Stroll as he climbs up towards turn 2. Nearly 9 seconds now to the good.
Look at the gap.
Yeah.
Just, you know, it's really, really visible. There's Callum Ilott, who, for my money, has done a really, really good job, actually, because he's had threats and he's had pressure, hasn't he? But he's seemingly controlled it. He's run wide once or twice.
And Lance Stroll will start tomorrow's third race provisionally from pole position. Because he got 2 fastest times out of the session yesterday. So that might send people into a bit of concern overnight, thinking, well, if he can do it once, he can do it twice.
Yes.
So we have still battles to sort out. 6th and 7th, as an example, Mikkel Jensen and Maximilian Günther. And we've got one more lap to run at the end of this as the cars work their way then now down through Pirelli, plunging downhill. They go towards Wörth, which on the exit of is where we had the accident in race 1 this morning. And our best wishes for a quick and speedy recovery go to Arnd Vita and to Peter Lee, Jikong Lee, after the accident earlier on. Right, Lance Stroll has just got over the timing line. If anybody else is second, I'll let you know, because he's already round turn 2, and only now has Callum Ilott gone over the timing line. 9.2 seconds is the margin.
Extraordinary. Just for the want of saying something, really, Nikita Mazepin is under investigation for managing track limits, David.
Right, OK, well, he's already had a warning flag. And I seem to remember he had a drive-through for a jump start earlier on as well, so he's gone for the full set. Right, OK, and he's in 17th place, Nikita Mazepin. Fastest lap of the race, a new lap record, Sergio Sette Camara in 8th place. So somebody else still pushing right to the very end. So that takes a bit of the shine off this for Lance Stroll. He's done everything right, hasn't he? He set a lap record, and then some pesky bloke in 8th place goes even quicker at the end. Admittedly with a toe in a sector or two, but even so, Sergio Sette Camara's lap time is better than Lance Stroll's. Lance has lifted his pace a little bit on this lap, so he can afford so to do. Through Wörth, the Prema Power Team / Theodore Racing car accelerates up now towards the Rindt curve. And it's going to be a third Formula 3 career win for Lance Stroll. And you've got to say his best yet, because that has just been a stunning drive. He's not done anything wrong, built up a huge advantage. And so the 11th round of the championship is won by Lance Stroll, who comes across the line to win race 2 in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship at the Red Bull Ring. And somebody's going to be second soon. Callum Ilott now breaks the beam and is 9.9 seconds back in second place. George Russell takes third. Nico Kari on his tail for fourth. Fifth is David Beckman. Good effort that, ahead of the more experienced teammate at Mirka Mikkel Jensen. Max Günther is seventh. Eighth will go the way of Sergio Sette Camara, who got a new lap record in the race. Ninth, Alessio Lorandi. The top 10 is going to be rounded out by Joel Eriksson. And then it's Antoine Hubert and Guanyu Zhao together. Zhao 12th. Bear in mind he had to pit for damage at the end of the first lap. 13th, Ralph Aaron, who had to pit for damage. 14th, Wyron Tan, who had to pit for damage. 15th, Ben Barnicoat, who had a drive-through for a jump start. 16th, Harry Newey, who had a drive-through for pushing another car. And 17th for Nikita Mazepin, who had everything. Jump start, track limits, and you name it. So he was 17th, and what a drive by Lance Stroll.
Accomplished, I think, is the word that can be used to describe that drive. Absolutely brilliant. When we see the replay of him taking the checkered flag for, and I think I agree with you, probably the best drive of his career in FIA Formula 3. A super slow-mo there. What a great shot that is of the checkered flag over the front of the car. Rennie Rossin right to the very back of your picture there from Prema Power Team, and the rest of the crew absolutely delighted from that. Really, really accomplished drive. There is his father,
yes.
Lawrence. Be very pleased with that.
Absolutely right. Yes, proud dad and part team owner these days. But 9.9 seconds is a very, very impressive margin, bearing in mind that everybody has the same chassis. It's not a one-make championship, but Formula 3 has evolved into this Dallara-dominated categories. The top 10 is Stroll, Eilert, Russell, Kari, Beckman, Jensen, Günther, Kamara, Lorandi and Ericsson. With an 11th place out of the points, Antoine Hubert ahead of Zhao, Aron, Tan, Barnicoat, Newey and Mazepin. Pedro Piquet was 5 laps down after a long pit stop to make sure the car was 100% after its huge impact this morning. Well, George Russell had a lively race, didn't he? He tried as hard as he could to take second place away from Callum Eilert and briefly did it, but then ran wide at turn 1 and the place went back the way of his fellow countrymen. But third place for George Russell, second to the man that won earlier on in the day, namely Callum Eilert, and a race win, the second of the year, going the way of Lance Stroll. He had a second place this morning, now a win. What's he going to be able to do in the third race, which will be up tomorrow morning? That's going to be another fascinating race to watch. It will be underway at 11:20 local time tomorrow morning here from the Red Bull Ring. Callum Eilert out of his car, fellow Brit George Russell there in the background. As to a noisy reception from Prema Power Team, a delighted Lance Stroll arrives. The Canadian driver lifts his visor, and you'll be able to hear the reception from the Prema guys. Out he clambers and will shortly make his way to the top step of the podium. The rookie competition, incidentally, was a win for Nico Kari from David Beckman and Joel Eriksson third, as Lance Stroll celebrates atop the car. Michael Schumacher style. Goes to his engineers. Handshakes all round. And hugs and embraces all of them. And Dad standing in the background, waiting his turn. Lance will get there in a minute, and a very, very happy family scene. So Lance Stroll takes the win. And the drivers now make their way to the podium, where the FIA Formula 3 European Championship officials await. And Lance Stroll very, very happy with the result, and understandably so. Former F4 racer, Toyota Racing Series champion, and somebody who's recently added sports car racing to his CV as well, having raced in the Daytona 24 Hours. So a very happy man is Lance Stroll, and of course that increases the championship lead. So he's been busy racking up the points, having already had a win, and coming here as the championship leader, and 2 disappointing results now for championship rival Max Günther. Okay, he was third in the first race, but was outscored by Stroll. And in the second race, he ends up in 7th position. So it's not been a great day thus far for Günther. But at least he is scoring points. I suppose that's the important thing about it. And he will make his way up to the podium. A very good effort, though, by David Beckman, who has only done the championship from Spa onwards. Po onwards. So, despite the fact he's giving away quite a lot in terms of knowledge and experience of a Formula 3 car against the opposition, he's adapted very, very well. Yes, he's raced here and been very competitive here in F4, but even so, Formula 3 is a new car for him. So Lance Stroll's advantage in the championship now is not over Günther as such, but it's over Callum Eilert, who moves up into 2nd spot. Günther down to 3rd. George Russell's 4th. Then it's Nick Cassidy, who didn't finish that race. Ben Barnicoat behind him. Mikkel Jensen is 7th. Joel Eriksson 8th. Ralph Aron and Sergio Sette Camara round out the top 10. So the drivers make their way to the podium. Let's have a look at some of the best bits of race 2 at the Red Bull Ring.